There are certain truths about being a man, unspoken, quiet, even hidden, that once you start living them, change everything. These aren't the surface-level things people like to repost or talk about at networking events. These are private, personal truths. And the moment you embrace them, the world doesn't reward you. It reacts to you. You become a target. Not because you're wrong, not because you're broken, but because you've stepped into a rare kind of power, a silent strength that others either don't understand or secretly envy. You stop chasing validation and suddenly people call you arrogant. You choose solitude and they call you antisocial. You hold boundaries and they call you toxic. You move in purpose and suddenly you're too intense. As the ancient Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius once said, the object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. And that's exactly what happens when you embrace truth in a dishonest world. You stand out. And standing out will always put a target on your back. This video isn't about making you afraid of that target. It's about helping you understand why it's there. We're going to explore 5 private truths that every powerful, self-aware, emotionally disciplined man must face. Truths that make you more focused, more grounded, more magnetic, and yet more likely to be misunderstood, challenged, or even hated. But that's the price of freedom. The closer you get to the truth, the more resistance you'll face. It's not a punishment, it's confirmation. You're getting closer to something real. So if you've ever felt isolated because of your growth, if you've been attacked for making changes that benefit your peace, or if you've been made to feel guilty for standing firm in your truth, this video is for you. We're going to break each of these 5 truths down through emotional insight, real-life examples, ancient wisdom, and practical advice for men walking this difficult but powerful path. Like this video, if you're tired of being misunderstood for simply growing, share it with a brother who's walking this lonely but necessary road. Subscribe if you're building unshakable strength, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And comment below, have you ever felt like the more true you become, the more you get targeted for it? Let's begin. Chapter 1. You stop needing approval, and it threatens people. There comes a moment in a man's life when he wakes up and realizes something powerful, something terrifying, something liberating. He no longer needs to be liked. That moment doesn't come in a dramatic flash. It comes slowly, after you've been betrayed by people you tried to please, after you've bent over backward to keep peace, only to be met with disrespect, after you've exhausted yourself trying to fit into a mold that was never designed for your soul. When that realization hits you, you stop chasing compliments. You stop softening your voice to make others comfortable. You stop apologizing for your presence. And you start moving with clarity, discipline, and purpose. A man who seeks approval is a servant to the opinions of others. Ancient Stoic principle. This truth is private because it happens internally. People may not see the exact moment it clicks in your mind, but they will feel the change in your energy. And once they feel it, they'll respond to it, often with confusion, resentment, or even aggression. Because here's the uncomfortable reality. When you no longer need approval, you become a mirror to those who are still slaves to it. And that makes them uncomfortable. Why it makes you a target. When you stop living for approval, you stop doing things for attention. That means you don't fake smiles, you don't exaggerate stories, you don't kiss up to people just to be accepted into rooms you no longer care about. But here's what happens. The moment you stop playing the game, people start asking questions. Why is he so quiet now? Who does he think he is? He used to be so nice. Now he just does his own thing. To those still addicted to validation, your self-respect feels like arrogance. Your silence feels like rejection. Your independence feels like judgment. When you stop needing the crowd to clap for you, you become powerful, but you also become dangerous to their egos. And that's why you become a target. Take the story of Marcus, a 32-year-old man who spent most of his 20s trying to please everyone. His boss, his girlfriend, his old high school friends. He never said no, never challenged opinions, and never stood up for himself. He was the nice guy. Then something shifted. After years of stress and disappointment, he started reading, journaling, and meditating. Slowly, he realized he was living for everyone but himself. So he started setting boundaries. He turned down invites. He spoke more directly. He stopped entertaining drama. What happened? People started saying he changed. Friends stopped calling. His girlfriend told him he was cold. Even his family said, "You've become distant." But Marcus wasn't broken. He was evolving. His growth made people uncomfortable because it forced them to confront the parts of themselves they refused to fix. And that is the emotional price of maturity. Lao Tzu, the father of Taoism, once said, "Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner." Thousands of years ago, this truth was understood. When a man is free from external validation, he moves with an energy that's unshakable. He doesn't compete loudly, he flows. He doesn't argue with fools, he observes. He doesn't beg for love, he becomes love. And that makes him mysterious, even threatening. In ancient China, warriors were trained not only in combat but in detachment, because a man who is calm under pressure and who doesn't seek praise or panic under judgment cannot be manipulated. And today, when you stop seeking approval in a world built on attention-seeking, you become a modern warrior, but you also become a target. How to handle it as a man? So what do you do when people start falling away? When people attack your confidence or mistake your stillness for arrogance, you stay centered. You remind yourself, if being true to myself costs me shallow relationships, then I'm better off alone than in chains. That doesn't mean you isolate yourself from everyone. It means you become intentional. You protect your energy. You engage with those who respect your presence, not those who demand a performance. This chapter of your life isn't about proving anything. It's about mastering yourself. You don't need applause. You don't need to be the loudest man in the room. You just need to know who you are and walk in that truth, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Drop a comment below if you've ever stopped trying to please people and noticed how it changed the way others treated you. Chapter 2. You walk away from chaos. And it exposes people. One of the most powerful decisions a man can make is to walk away, not in anger, not in weakness, but in calm certainty. To walk away from arguments that go in circles, to walk away from relationships that drain your spirit, to walk away from environments that disturb your peace. At first, it feels like abandonment, it feels like quitting. But with time, you realize it's not weakness, it's wisdom. Never wrestle with pigs, you both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it. George Bernard Shaw. When a man learns to preserve his energy instead of spending it on chaos, he transforms. He doesn't fight every battle, he doesn't respond to every insult, he doesn't stay in rooms where his soul feels suffocated, and the world doesn't like that. Because the moment you start choosing peace over drama, you stop being predictable, you stop being reactive, and you stop being easy to control. That's when people panic. That's when they say you're avoiding accountability. That's when they accuse you of being too distant or too detached. Why? Because your silence exposes their noise. Why it makes you a target. When you walk away from chaos, you remove yourself from the emotional bait others use to control you. The manipulator, who used guilt to keep you involved, now they can't reach you. The friend who only calls when there's gossip or drama, you've gone quiet. The relationship that fed off conflict, it has nothing to feed on anymore. When your energy is no longer available, people feel exposed. They realize they weren't connecting with you, they were consuming you. And when they can't do that anymore, they get angry. You become a target not because you hurt them, but because you stopped letting them hurt you. A man who can walk away is a man who cannot be manipulated. And in today's world, that kind of man is dangerous. Let's talk about Elijah, a 29-year-old man who grew up in a loud household, yelling, arguments, emotional outbursts. He carried that into adulthood, thinking conflict was normal. Every relationship he entered was filled with emotional chaos, and he thought love meant fighting to make it work. But one day, after a particularly draining argument with his partner, he just stood still. He didn't yell, he didn't cry, he didn't explain, he just left. Not out of hate, but out of exhaustion. He realized he had mistaken intensity for intimacy. He was addicted to drama because he feared stillness. In the months that followed, he rebuilt his life: quiet mornings, deep work, journaling, therapy, peace. The people who used to be in his life, most didn't understand. Some called him heartless, others accused him of running away. But the truth, he was running home, back to himself. In feudal Japan, samurai were trained not only in battle, but in emotional detachment. They had to master their internal world as fiercely as they trained for war. A samurai didn't flinch when insulted. He didn't strike out of anger. He moved with intention, not emotion. One powerful teaching from that era says, to know when to fight and when to walk away is the mark of true strength. You don't win every battle by engaging. Sometimes you win by not giving the enemy a battlefield. This is how emotionally grounded men live. They don't waste energy where no growth can happen. They don't stay in environments that poison their peace. And because of that, they're often misunderstood. But the path of emotional mastery is not about being liked. It's about being free. How to handle it as a man. When you start walking away from chaos, prepare for the backlash. People will question your silence. They'll accuse you of changing. Some may even try to guilt you back into the storm. But remember, you do not owe your energy to people who treat peace like it's a problem. Instead of reacting, observe. Instead of arguing, detach. Instead of explaining, stay grounded in your truth. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself. It means you protect your soul. You choose your battles, and most importantly, you choose yourself. This is not weakness. This is emotional power, and it will make you a target to people who thrived on your chaos. Let them be uncomfortable. You weren't born to live in emotional storms. You were born to build something solid. Drop a comment below if you've ever walked away from a situation just to protect your peace. Chapter 3. You embrace solitude and people can't handle it. There is a unique kind of strength in a man who enjoys his own company. Not just tolerates it, but chooses it. He doesn't need the noise. He doesn't chase the crowd. He doesn't fear silence. And in today's world, that kind of man is rare. Because from the time we're boys, we're taught that solitude is loneliness. That if you're alone, something must be wrong with you. But here's the real truth. A man who finds peace in solitude has already mastered the chaos of the world. Ancient proverb. The moment you begin to value your time, your space, and your mind, you become dangerous. Because you no longer chase distractions. You no longer need the approval of a crowd. You've built something most people run from, inner stillness. And that makes you a target. Because in a world addicted to attention, your independence looks like rebellion. Why it makes you a target? When you embrace solitude, people start to question your life. Why is he always by himself? Doesn't he have friends? Why is he so distant? But what they're really saying is, I don't understand how he can be content without needing validation like I do. And that's what disturbs them. You're not supposed to be okay without them. You're not supposed to go days without texting back. You're not supposed to say no thanks when they invite you into spaces you've outgrown. But when a man stops running from himself, he becomes free. And freedom, to the insecure, feels like rejection. They start trying to pull you back into distractions, back into emotional dependency, back into the same cycles that you've outgrown. And when you resist, you become arrogant, selfish, weird, not because you've changed for the worse, but because you've become something they're not ready to be. Consider James, a man in his late 30s who had always been the life of the party. Every weekend was full of events, people, noise, but deep down he felt empty, like he was always on for others and never honest with himself. One day, after a harsh breakup and the sudden death of a close friend, James pulled away. He started hiking alone, reading alone, sitting in silence, reflecting. The transformation was powerful. He stopped chasing approval, stopped over-explaining himself, and started hearing his own voice again. But the people around him, they didn't understand. "Bro, are you depressed? You never hang out anymore. You think you're better than us now?" But he wasn't better, he was healing. And healing often requires isolation. He didn't shut the world out of hate. He just stopped depending on it for identity. In many ancient cultures, warriors weren't considered fully formed until they spent time alone, in the wilderness, in meditation, or in a cave. The idea was simple. If a man cannot sit with his own soul, he is not ready to lead others. In ancient Egypt, initiates into the mysteries were made to sit in total darkness with no noise for days. In those moments of solitude, the noise of the world would fade, and what was left was the truth of who they were. You see, solitude isn't loneliness, it's leadership. It's not withdrawal, it's preparation. It's not weakness, it's recalibration. And that kind of man, centered, grounded, undistracted, is not easy to manipulate. That's why he becomes a target. How to handle it as a man. When you start enjoying solitude, people may try to shame you out of it. They'll say you're too distant, too serious, too cold. They'll mistake your calm for coldness. They'll mistake your depth for darkness. But hold the line, because the man who cannot be alone is the man who will be controlled by anyone. So when the world tries to lure you back into empty noise, fake friendships, or shallow relationships, stay grounded, keep showing up for yourself, keep protecting your inner peace, keep investing in the quiet places where real strength is forged. This phase of solitude isn't forever, but it's necessary, and what it produces in you cannot be taken away by anyone. Let them call you distant. Let them misunderstand your silence. What matters is that you're hearing your own voice again. Drop a comment below if you've learned to enjoy solitude and noticed how people responded to your silence. Chapter 4. You own your truth, and that threatens the status quo. The most dangerous man isn't the one who raises his fist. It's the one who owns his truth, without apology, without doubt, without hesitation. To own your truth means to look inward and say, "This is who I am. These are my values. This is my purpose." It's the moment when you stop hiding behind masks, stop bending to fit others' expectations, stop pretending to be someone you're not. When a man owns his truth, he becomes a beacon, a lighthouse in the storm, a force that draws others, whether they are ready or not. And that is what makes him a target. Because the status quo doesn't want anyone rocking the boat. It doesn't want anyone disrupting the comfortable lies people tell themselves. It doesn't want a man who challenges the system or challenges their complacency. Truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself. Saint Augustine. When you live authentically, you force others to face their own lies. People don't like that. They'd rather see you conform, stay silent, and avoid difficult questions. They'd rather you play the game, follow the rules, and not disturb their comfort. But you don't. You speak your mind, you set boundaries, you live by principles, not by popular opinion. And that makes people uncomfortable. They may call you stubborn, arrogant, difficult, even dangerous, because your truth exposes their weakness. Think of David, a man in his early 40s, who built a successful business on integrity and hard work. But he refused to cut corners. He refused to play politics. He refused to sacrifice his values for quick gains. At work, he faced constant pressure to conform, to go along with unethical deals, to smooth over conflicts with lies, to keep the peace by avoiding hard truths. He was labeled rigid, uncooperative, too idealistic. But David didn't budge. He held his ground. He lived his truth. And though he lost some friends and business partners, he gained something far greater, respect from himself. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, taught, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." He ruled an empire under constant threat, yet he stayed true to his values, compassion, justice, self-discipline. He knew that owning your truth in a world full of shadows makes you vulnerable, but it also makes you powerful. He understood that a man who lives his truth becomes a force that can change everything around him, starting with himself. How to handle it as a man. Owning your truth isn't easy. It means facing criticism, losing approval, being misunderstood, but it also means freedom. When you face resistance, remind yourself, my peace and integrity are worth more than fleeting acceptance. Stand firm, speak clearly, live honestly. You don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need everyone to like you. You only need to be faithful to yourself. This is the ultimate power, the power that makes you a target and the power that makes you unstoppable. Drop a comment below if you're ready to own your truth, no matter what others say.